To Love a Dragon. Chapter 3. Park sighed as he made his way back to his horse and started the long journey back to the castle. It was a day's ride back home, and he made pace by riding his horse hard to make up for some time. He worried every time he had to go back. Would anyone know? He's always been worried about being followed, and damn him if Andre wouldn't interrogate him about the sick relative Park had been claiming to be attending to. Andre was a cruel man, cold and uncaring. He'd rather see another's entire family starve before duty was broken. But fortunately for Park, a senior officer to both of them allowed Park to go and attend to his sick uncle. All the while, Lillian had made it back to the edge of her kingdom's borders. The fighting had stopped for now. An uneasy truce had been made by both kingdoms. But in truth, neither side truly believed the other would respect it. It was viewed by many not to last, but only create a short break for both races. Lillian had enjoyed the temporary peace. It was a way for her to sneak away and see Park, as well as the two had grown tired of the war. Through their love, the two had been able to see the other's race in a new light. They had grown to forget the other's past, and only see their love for each other now. Lillian had made sure not to be seen from the direction she came. She was always good at hiding from the humans, but to her own kind it was much harder. She was still an elite dragoness, though. Stealth and ferocity were a few of her greatest attributes. She darted through the trees until she made her way to the base of the mountain. She gazed up at the kingdom of dragons. Towers and caves carved in the side of the mountain as rivers flowed freely from the cloud-covered peak. With one mighty leap, she flew upwards, jumping from rock to make it to her cave. Never once did she lose her footing once she finally made it back to her home. Lillian stretched, walking inside. She made her way to the torches that lined the walls. She put her face to the wall and looked down the row of torches and shot out a single flame, igniting them one by one as the flame passed by. The flame traveled to the end of the cave until it hit the wall. The cave lit up in majesty. She never had many belongings, only her rack where her clothing hung and the pile of gold coins, gems, and other precious things that she would sleep upon. But she never needed much. Her cave had its own beauty. The walls were low in the beginning, but traveling further and revealed the ceiling going up and up much higher. The walls were decorated with gems unmined from the earth, and best of all, a natural hot spring welled up inside her cave, allowing Lilian to bathe. And with that, she decided it was time to do so. She removed her clothes, revealing her naked frame. She closed her eyes and rubbed her neck, running her hands down her breasts and down to her hips. She thought of him. She would imagine him with her here. The two would undress and slip into the spring. She would massage the human and kiss him down his body. She imagined making love to him here, keeping him safe from everything. She wanted nothing more than no harm to come to her human. Lillian stepped into the spring and leaned back against the rocks. She closed her eyes and smiled at the thought of Park.
And what are we so happy about?
Lillian's eyes opened wide. She gasped and turned to see another in her cave. She jumped back into the water, covering her breasts. She dropped her head down and shut her eyes.
Elder Ryu,
Lillian spoke. An older and hunched dragon stood before her. He was garbed in a silk robe and had leathery whiskers that flowed from the sides of his muzzle like a human's mustache. His body was different than hers, not counting the fact that he was male. He was longer and skinnier than she was, but usually kept the length of his body bunched together to be seen as smaller. And even in his older years, it was harder for one of his kind to stretch out fully. He walked slowly to her, keeping his balance with a staff.
Lilian, my dear, how have you been?
Lillian's eyes rose to look upon the elder dragon. She calmed herself as to not seem guilty or raise suspicion.
I'm good, Elder Ryu.
Ryu raised an eyebrow at her.
How have you been during this break in conflict? I trust you are holding up well while we try to keep peace with the humans.
Lillian responded.
Yes, Elder. I've been enjoying the peace as well. I've been able to finally visit the West Peak beyond the valley, my place of birth.
Ah, yes. That is where you hatched, raised by your mother until coming to the Mountain Kingdom for your training. I'm happy to hear you were able to visit. I was afraid you might have gone to the eastern borders.
Lillian's heart stopped. The eastern borders were what separated the two kingdoms, and where Lillian would go to see Park.
No, Elder Ryu. I would not go more near to the human world than needed, especially not now.
She lied. Ryu paced around Lillian's private spring. He didn't even look at her as he walked.
Good. We can't have any conflicts between the races. Too many lives have been lost because of this war. It matters not if it is dragon or human. All life is sacred, and we must do what we can to preserve all life. We fought this war out of necessity, not desire for bloodshed. Even now, the human king has been coming around to thinking the same. Even if it is from pressure of the other humans.
Ryu had made his way to the rack where Lillian hung her clothes. He picked up the leather with his staff. Lillian's mouth opened slightly. She knew, he knew. Park's scent was on her clothing. Ryu looked over to her. He dropped the leather back on the rack. Then Lillian closed her mouth, not knowing what to expect next. Ryu sighed and started to the mouth of the cave.
You know that I am a kind and forgiving dragon, unlike the other elders. If you are to continue to see your human, the consequences could be dire for both kingdoms. Such a thing will never be taken lightly by either race and could send this peace into a spiraling doom for all. Believe me when I tell you, I know your heart wants what the heart wants. There was a time in the island nation called Japan, where I am from. I fell for a human woman. I was but a simple river dragon and protected all beings who came to my river. She was ultimately killed by her own family for the love we shared, and I was the one to blame. Many of my kind were hated there and were forced to leave for my selfishness. That is why I left and came here. And in these years of my life, wisdom is what I have to offer.
Lillian closed her eyes slightly and hung her head. He was right. This love could not only destroy them, but others of their own races that have nothing to do with this. Ryu stepped out and was gone. Lillian exhaled deeply. Not knowing what to do next, she slumped into the water. She put her face to her hands and sobbed. The last flickering torch on the wall dimmed to its last ember, and with one last flick, it went out in a stream of smoke. The cave went dark, and Lillian was alone. Before drifting to sleep, she thought of Park. She prayed to the gods her dreams would not be the last time she were to see him. Park rode into the edge of the town surrounding the castle. He watched cautiously as he made his way to the bridge. People were out talking and trading in the market as usual. Cattle and horses led around to the usual places. People chatting and laughing, and the drunks still sleeping outside the tavern. Park rode past a local blacksmith to see him yelling at his apprentice. He chuckled at this. The sight always lifted his spirits. Having to leave his love left him with a spirit in need of raising. Park cautiously approached the gate to the castle. He yelled up to the gate guard.
"It is I, Park of the Royal Guard."
The guard looked down at him for a moment as another walked up to him and looked down as well. Park shut his eyes to the second man. He was weary of this. Never before had it taken so long. Park's eyes narrowed.
Blast.
He thought, no good would come from this. The gate slowly began to lower until coming to rest upon the ground. Park tapped his legs on the sides of his horse and trotted inside. Making his way inside, a squire ran to Park and took the reins of his horse. Park lowered himself off of the horse and looked around. No one was present. He wasn't sure what was going on.
"Park!"
A voice shouted. Park looked forward to see a brute of a man walking toward him, outfitted in armor, greasy matted hair, and an unruly beard. Andre, captain of the guard, made his way to Park. Park looked at him with disdain. He truly hated this man. He was the epitome of disgusting. A deep booming voice, a laugh that would make children cry, his beard lined with pieces of uneaten food and filth, a stench that reminded him of a dire wolf's uneaten kill, and breath that could surely paralyze a griffin. Andre approached Park, growling.
"Where in the hell have you been? Your time of leave was for a day. You've been gone for 3, Park."
"I told you before, Andre. It is a day's ride to my uncle's estate. So too for travel alone. Or did you forget your abacus?"
"Mind your tone with me, boy."
Andre grabbed Park by his breastplate and pulled him close to his face. His hot breath smelled like rancid fish.
"You will do your best to remember to address me as Captain. It is the rank I have earned, whelp."
Park immediately pushed Andre's arm away.
"I care not how many nobles you had to pleasure to earn your rank, Captain. And don't forget I will be leaving in a week again."
Andre grumbled to himself. He watched as Park walked away to his quarters.
"Guard!"
A guard trotted up to Andre. "Yes, Captain," the guard announced. Andre peered at Park walking away.
"Watch Park, and when he prepares to leave again, alert me. We may have to go tend to his uncle with him."
Park made his way into his quarters at the royal barracks. With his time served, Park had been able to enjoy the fruits of his labors with his own private quarters. He still preferred to keep one at the barracks with the rest of the soldiers. His leadership demanded respect from the rest of the soldiers, and knew they would follow him. Park sat down into his chair and sighed in a heap. He cared for his men, but he would trade it all away to be with her for only a moment. He went to his writing desk and opened a hidden compartment below the top drawer. Inside was a single piece of parchment. He placed it on top of the writing desk and gazed upon it. It was a drawing he had made of Lilian and himself, holding hands together. He could remember every detail and contour of her face. Her image was burned into his memory. He would not forget it, even if he had tried. Park hated to be away from her, but his drawing helped ease his heart's hurt. He reminded himself that he would see her again and would count every day until it was time to leave. Park kissed the picture, folded the parchment back up, and secured it into the compartment from which it came. The day was growing late, and he was tired. Park stood up and began removing his armor. Piece by piece it came off and hit the floor. The task was tiresome, and he thought to Lillian.
"I think this is how she feels when she has to take mine off."
Park finally removed the last piece and laid down. His eyes almost immediately grew heavy and shut. He could see Lillian's face in his head before finally drifting off.